Hello everybody, this is AW. Continuing the trial, we're on chapter 3. Once again, for those of you randomly listening, I'm starting with the third video in this series. Here's the hook for you. Joseph K. is guilty. If you want to know why, listen to everything I've said. And Hyperion has said, because I'm here with my friend Hyperion, reading along and commenting as well. Should we move to the other one? Yeah, we probably should. So let's shift over. So what I have? There was something I had in mind for something about last time. Yes, going back to something on chapter 2. And I thought of this, and actually somebody mentioned it on the YouTube comments. Let me go see if I can find it. The examining magistrate asks him the first question of his hearing, which is, so you are a house painter, and Joseph K. says, well, no, I'm a bank executive, chief financial officer at some unnamed bank. And the crowd, half the crowd dies laughing. Not literally, but metaphorically, they're laughing pretty hard. I would explain what I thought that was, that they were laughing at K, not at the judge. I didn't explain. I had another interpretation of that, not different but additional to, which is that a painter, Kay is sort of insulted by that. He insulted and laughs at it because he's like, oh, how could they mistake me for someone as lowly as a painter? The point is that to them he's spiritually as lowly as a painter, if one could say that. Another one is that painters deal with just covering up the exterior of things, and paint is just an appearance. And Joseph K. is a very superficial person who, I think already in the first chapter and second chapter we have established very strongly that he bases a lot of his judgments off of stupid superficial appearances. Doesn't go any deeper. So him being called a house painter goes with that. In a way, that also ties in with what he is as a job, his occupation. He's a financial officer at a bank. Finance capital could be said, and I think if this is connecting it to something exterior, but it goes very well. Marx deals a lot with the whole idea that money is just a very surface appearance to the economy. People think that GDP and money is what is the actual measure that tells you what the economy, whether something's economically good or not. And when you actually think about that strongly, you come to the conclusions that no, that's actually not it. That money is just a surface appearance. Money is just paint upon the economy. So in that way, we can say that Joseph K. is definitely a painter. As for the comment on YouTube, let me see.
It says, I don't know if the word play works in German, but in Hebrew, money laundering is called whitewashing money. So him being called a house painter as a banker who laundered money, if that is indeed his crime, which is also expected, or almost expected out of a banker, would be quite hilarious, and indeed at Kay's expense and not like the system, at least in Hebrew, if not in German.
Yeah, which is very interesting, and Kafka does not strike me as somebody who would not be aware of Hebrew. So That's
Wait,
another
did
thing
you
that
do
goes very
a
well.
double negation? So you're saying Kafka would be aware of the Hebrew tongue, right?
No, he would. He does not strike me as somebody who would not be aware of the Hebrew. So yeah, so he would be aware of it.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I just wanted to be clear. I thought I heard that.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, let's get on with chapter 3. Let us see how this man digs himself ever further in his self-imposed trial. First, since the very beginning, this is a big point, keeps coming up, and it will keep coming up, that even he is aware that he has brought this upon himself. So, chapter 3, in the empty courtroom, the student, the offices. Every day over the following week, Kay expected another summons to arrive. He could not believe that his rejection of any more hearings had been taken literally, and when the expected summons really had not come by Saturday evening, he took it to mean that he was expected, without being told to appear at the same place at the same time. So on Sunday, he set out once more in the same direction, going without hesitation up the steps and through the corridors. Some of the people remembered him and greeted him from their doorways, but he no longer needed to ask anyone the way, and soon arrived at the right door. It was opened as soon as he knocked, and paying no attention to the woman he had seen last time who was standing at the doorway, he was about to go straight into the adjoining room when she said to him, "There's no session today." "What do you mean, no session?" he asked, unable to believe it. But the woman persuaded him by opening the door to the next room. It was indeed empty, and looked even more dismally empty than it had the previous Sunday. Wait, wasn't it in the previous Sunday that it was like chock full of people?
Yep.
That's just weird phrasing. There's been a few like phrasing problems, like and misspellings so far. That just seems kind of weird.
Wait, was it on Sunday that he?
Yeah, it was the
about,
prior.
Like, the trial on Sunday.
Yeah. When he went, like it was Pat's. So he says, and looked even more dismal, empty. Or maybe that's just weird phrasing.
Yeah.
On the podium. Yeah. So on the podium stood the table exactly as it had been before, with a few books laying on it. "Can I have a look at those books?" asked Kay, not because he was especially curious, but so that he would not have come for nothing. "Remember that last time he said he picked up those books with 2 fingers, by a pinch, and said they were unworthy of him, and that he didn't want to know what was in them, because, they disgusted him, and he didn't take them seriously enough, that, even holding them by the edge of 2 fingers was repugnant to him." So, "Can I have a look at those books?" "No," said the woman, as she reclosed the door. "That's not allowed. Those books belong to the examining judge." "I see," said Kay, and nodded. "Those books must be law books, and that's how this court does things, not only to try people who are innocent, but even to try them without letting them know what's going on." "I expect you're right," said the woman, who had not understood exactly what he meant. "I'd better go away then." "I'd better go away again then," said Kay. "Should I give a message to the examining judge?" asked the woman. "Do you know him then?" asked Kay. "Of course I know him," said the woman. "My husband is the court usher." It was only now that Kay noticed that the room, which before had held nothing but a washtub, had been fitted out as a living room. The woman saw how surprised he was and said, "Yes, we're allowed to live here as we like, although we have to clear the room out when the court's in session. There's lots of disadvantages to my husband's job." "It's not so much the room that surprises me," said Kay, looking at her crossly. "It's your being married that shocks me." "Are you thinking about what happened last time the court was in session, when I disturbed what you were saying?" asked the woman. "Of course," said Kay. "It's in the past now, and I've nearly forgotten about it, but at the time it made me furious. And now you tell me yourself that you are a married woman. It wasn't any disadvantage for you to have your speech interrupted. The way they talked about you after you'd gone was really bad." "That could well be," said Kay, turning away, "but it does not excuse you." There's no one I know who'd hold it against me, said the woman. Him, who put his arms around me, he's been chasing after me for a long time. I might not be very attractive for most people, but I am for him. I've got no protection from him. Even my husband has had to get used to it. If he wants to keep his job, he's got to put up with it, as that man's a student, and he'll almost certainly be very powerful later on. He's always after me. He'd only just left when you arrived. That fits with everything else, said Kay. I'm not surprised. Do you want to make things a bit better here? The woman asked slowly, watching him as if she were saying something that could be as dangerous for Kay as for herself. That's what I thought when I heard you speak. I really liked what you said. Mind you, I only heard part of it. I missed the beginning of it, and at the end I was lying on the floor with the student. It's so horrible here, she said after a pause and took hold of Kay's hand. Do you believe you really will be able to make things better? She just kind of paused there and comment on something. So if you go back to chapter 2, in this event, I swear I listened to this like 4 times last year, and I never caught it. So I thought she was the one screaming because the student was was kind of like forcing himself on her. But yeah, she kicked him, or she did something to him that made him scream because he was looking up, yelling his head off.
Yelped out, yeah.
Yeah. So she kicked him in the balls, most likely. And she did it on purpose to stop Kay from talking because she was helping him. She knew that it was going bad, that he was making himself look bad, and it was making things worse. She actually helped him. And she's told him here. And Kay completely just went, did not compute in his head what she said. He still says, that doesn't excuse you. He still blames her and piles guilt on him.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Something that I didn't notice last time is the line, it's in the past now and I've nearly forgotten about it. This just furthers my conviction that he is living in the moment, but abstracted even from the moment. He can't even remember, like, a huge event that happened. That event. Oh yeah, you're that one that interrupted my speech and the whole thing, fell in shambles. I've nearly forgotten about it, because he's unconcerned with anything.
He's unconcerned. At the same time, he says, I've nearly forgotten about it, and the moment he's reminded, it's like a wound to open up fresh, he doesn't really forget it. It's that kind of superficial forgetting.
Oh yeah, you wronged me. I forgot about that. But he doesn't get it, that she was helping. It's in the past now, it's not relevant, but it is relevant.
But she's still guilty, according to him.
Yeah, no development, that's my thesis. He has no development. He doesn't learn from the past. He doesn't build up into the current person. He just he's whim manifest,
Yes, and especially with women, we're about to see this is the case.
No, I didn't say women. I said he's whim.
No, I said like he's whim, but we're going to see how he's whim with women, especially because women are.
Stop being misogynistic.
Yeah. No, I heard you correctly.
Sorry, just being clear for that.
So one thing is, he doesn't know how the court works. He's already been able to tell that at face he can't tell who's with the court and who's not. He knows this woman works for the court. She's giving him hints very strongly that she's in on things which he clearly doesn't know about, and that she might have an influence upon his trial. And actually this is going to become a bit more explicit. This goes along with the idea, which becomes very explicit near the end. I don't know how people miss it. The entire world is in on this trial. Everyone is part of the jury that is leading to the judgment. All the people, she says, they were talking bad about you, once you left. Why? Why does it matter that they were talking bad about him? Well, because it's their collective judgment as a whole, and which includes not just the people who were in there, but the people he lives with, the people he meets on the street, the random people, all of those people converge upon the process of deliberating his judgment. Every little thing he does is being observed, recorded, and jotted down to judge him. And he's not being told why, because the whole point of a judgment is that if they could, if a court could actually do this, they would, because it would be the ultimate.
Yeah.
It would be the ultimate way to assure that indeed justice was properly done, because it wouldn't be an abstraction. Like, everyone's in on it, so you don't have a shortage of insights of like, oh, well, it's you only got this side of the story. No, they're getting everyone's side of the story. So she heard one side of the story, and she says, like, I thought what you said was good. Like, you said that you wanted to make things better. She's like, I didn't hear the stuff before that, and I didn't hear the stuff afterward. So she heard the one part where, like, he actually pretended, which he lied, to be there for a good cause. And she's like, oh, well, if you're here for a good cause, then I want to help you. So, okay, do you want things to be better here? Okay, do you want to make things a bit better here? The woman asked slowly, watching him as if she were saying something that could be as dangerous for chaos for herself. That's what I heard when I heard you speak. I really liked what you said. Mind you, I only heard part of it. I missed the beginning of it at the end, and at the end I was lying on the phone with the student. So, as if she was saying something that could be as dangerous for chaos for herself. Why is it dangerous? Because this is a very important thing. Like, he's making... Though it's just with one person, it's one person with a court with something to do with, like, she might help him break a few rules if it is really that he intends for the best. If he's lying about that, that's very dangerous, because it's going to come back to bite him. So, okay, so horrible. So she says, it's so horrible here, she said after a pause, and took hold of Kay's hand. Do you believe you really will be able to make things better? Kay smiled and twisted his hand around a little in her soft hands. It's really not my job to make things better here, as you put it, he said. And if you said that to the examining judge, he would laugh at you or punish you for it. I really would not have become involved in this matter if I could have helped it, and I would have lost no sleep worrying about how this court feels, how this court needs to be made better. But because I'm told that I have been arrested, and I am under arrest, it forces me to take some action, and to do so for my own sake. However, if I can be of some service to you in the process, I will, of course, be glad to do so. And I will be glad to do so not only for the sake of charity, but also because you can be of some help to me. He shoots himself in the foot. Once he says, like, well, I wouldn't get involved in this, if I wasn't already involved in it. Even if I can see this place is bad, it's not a buy business. I'm not personally involved, so it's not my problem. Screw you. And he says, well, now that I'm involved, I'll gladly help you, but not merely because of charity, but because, I can use you. Egotistic asshole. How could I help you then? Said the woman. You could, for example, show me the books on the table there. Yes, certainly, the woman cried, and pulled Kay along behind her as she rushed to them. The books were old and well worn. The cover of one of them had nearly broken through in its middle, and it was held together with a few threads. Everything is so dirty here, said Kay, shaking his head, and before he could pick up the books up, the woman wiped some of the dust off with her apron. Kay took hold of the book that lay on top and threw it open. An indecent picture appeared. A man and a woman sat naked on a sofa. The base intent of whoever drew it was easy to see, but he had been so grossly lacking in skill that all that anyone could really make out were the man and the woman who dominated the picture, with their bodies sitting in overtly upright postures that created a false perspective and made it difficult for them to approach each other. This is something I also completely misunderstood all the other times I listened to it. I caught on the whole thing. He said it's an indecent picture. And I'm like, and I thought, the judge was just looking at pornography during the trial. And you think about it. Then he goes on to describe what it is that he sees. There's nothing indecent or pornographic about it. It's clearly a very symbolic, artistic picture. He assumes it's lacking any skill. In the same way that people who first see Picasso assume it's somebody with no skill. Because I did that when I first encountered Picasso. I'm like, why do people think it's great? Like it's the way children draw things. That's got no skill. It's only after you do a certain amount of education that you come to understand that there's actually very much a deep skill to what Picasso did, and it was deeply meaningful. So a man and a woman sat naked on a sofa. The base intent of whoever drew it was easy to see, but he had been so grossly lacking skill that all that anyone could really make out were the man and the woman who dominated the picture with their bodies, sitting in overly upright postures that created a false perspective and made it difficult for them to approach each other. So it's a picture of human alienation.
Yeah.
Kay didn't thumb through that book anymore, but just threw open the next one at its title page. It was a novel with the title, What Gret Suffered from Her Husband, Hans.
Nope. Greta.
Oh, Greta, yeah.
Hans.
What Gret?
It's Gretchen.
Ah, you didn't make the connection. So what Greta suffered from her husband, Hans. So this is the sort of law book they study here, said Kay. This is the sort of person sitting in judgment over me. I can help you, said the woman. Would you like me to? Could you really do that without placing yourself in danger? You did say earlier on that your husband is wholly dependent on his superiors. I still want to help you, said the woman. Come over here, we've got to talk about it. Don't say any more about what danger I'm in. I only fear danger when I want to fear it. Come over here. It's important. She's only afraid when she wants to be. She doesn't want to be right now, so she's not in danger. So all these hints she gives of like, this place is horrible and whatnot.
All these breadcrumbs, might we say?
Yeah. She's contradicting herself, clearly. And if he was paying attention, he'd notice that she was contradicting herself, and he'd notice that she's playing him along. Now, the weird thing is, okay, I'm just going to go here on a bit on secondary stuff. Even the people who I think who have like a decent interpretation of this, like Giorgiani, and not primarily Giorgiani, like later on in the book, there's a self-commentary as well, that the women were misleading him. I think in this case and in the other case that we're going to see, this is clearly not the case. She's trying to help him. And she's trying to help him, and like these are agents of the court, which are extremely attracted to him because he's such a base person. He sees a pretty woman, he's immediately attracted to them, and they're attracted to him because they're attracted to guilt. This is explained later on. But they're not deceivers; they're actually trying to help him, but they realize that he's such a superficial moron that the only way they can try to get under his superficiality is to feed into his stupid ego and particularly his womanizing side, in which like he has like this completely randomly uncontrollable desire for women. Like he's sexually repressed, you might say. Clearly he tried to rape a woman in chapter 1 at the end. Another thing is, okay, so he goes to the law books, or supposed law books, he doesn't even know, which he was told it's against the rules, you're not supposed to do that, and of course in any court, if you go and rifle through like the private documents of a judge or whatever, that's definitely against the rules of the process. He opens one book, he sees a picture, he says like, this is a crummy picture, wow, this artist sucks. Doesn't look any further into like what's in the content. He just flips another book open, looks at the title and says, wow, this is pretty stupid, so this is the kind of judge we have. Doesn't read any further.
So this is the law they're studying?
Yeah, like, he could have found out.
When you read it?
Yeah, he could have, he complains so much that, they don't tell me anything and I don't find out anything. Every chance he has to find out something, he doesn't take it. He already just assumes immediately, this is garbage.
Yeah.
It's got nothing
He's
to do with
crass,
what I
and
want.
he's like, this person's crass because they enjoy this, but he can't, see it for what it actually is.
Now, I don't know. Yeah, okay, yeah, definitely. This is way after. What's his name? Swedenborg.
Oh yeah.
Swedenborg specifically. This might have been something of the Theosophical Society, but I don't know very much about them. Talks about. Swedenborg says that the divine beings, like angels and the celestial life, communicates aesthetically. They don't communicate in propositional sentences like we do. So that image in the spiritual realm, let's say, which is what the court represents, as the court is a spiritual operation. He sees a picture and he's like, I don't understand this. This is stupid. They see that picture and they get an entire science of logic explication level out of that. They see the concrete truth in those images. For the second book, he opens up and it could be a story, or it could be a case. The title is, it could be either one. Because this could be a case, because judges look at prior cases. So this could be a prior case that this judge already dealt with. The case of Hans probably, and that was his wife, Hans being defendant, and this was his, what they were looking at for his case. So if Kay actually bothered looking at this, he would have found out what is it that they're looking out for me. Like, what is it they're looking out when I come to these hearings, or when they're trying to make a judgment. Had he looked at that, he probably would have found out what kinds of things they're looking at to judge him.
Yeah, he's not reading these. He thumbs through the first one and he finds a pornographic picture and he shuts it. And he looks at the title of the second one.
Yep.
And we know many people like that. Concerned
Absolutely.
only with appearance. Judging books by their covers.
Yep. So let's see. So he completely dismisses the books. So this is the sort of law book they study here, said Kay. This is the sort of person sitting judgment over me. I can help you, said the woman. Would you like me to? Could you really do that without placing yourself in danger? You did say earlier that your husband is wholly dependent on his superiors. I still want to help you, said the woman. Come over here. We've got to talk about it. Don't say any more than about what danger I'm in. I only fear danger when I want to fear it. Come over here. She pointed to the podium and invited him to sit down on the step with her. You've got lovely dark eyes, she said after they had sat down, looking up into Kay's face. People say I've got nice eyes too, but yours are much nicer. It was the first thing I noticed when you first came here. That's even why I came in here, into the assembly room afterwards. I'd never normally do that. I'm not really even allowed to. So that's what all this is about, thought Kay. She's offering herself to me. She's as degenerate as everything else around here. She's had enough of the court officials, which is understandable, I suppose, and so she approaches any stranger and makes compliments about his eyes. Huge, unwarranted assumption. I remember, I bought this too when I had assumed that it was the relationship with the student and her was different. But once you realize that she's actually in control of this, and she's already said she's in control of all of it, she's not in any danger unless she wants to be in danger. She's not being a whore. Complimenting somebody on their eyes is something completely non-sexual. I don't know why he would come.
Window to the soul.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the matter. What it's referring to. Yeah, he's got black eyes, dark eyes.
She has black eyes.
Yeah, she has black eyes. Which black, the
mirror.
what is the word? Yeah, it's a mirror, but it's a mirror, but it's also just the void of the undefinable God, the ineffable God. There was something else.
Were shining and black, so it couldn't see into her.
Okay, so another thing. Notice that everyone in the court so far has broken the rules in his favor, despite having no requirements to do so. The guards broke a couple things in his favor, told him things they didn't have to tell him. The examining magistrate allowed him to have a hearing, even though he didn't have to let him have a hearing because he came in late, which was his own fault. And then she broke her own rules of she never had gone back in, and she's like, but she was interested in him, so she broke the rules of going in and went in. And then she broke the rules again with letting him in when she shouldn't have. The court and its people are going out of their way to help him at every fucking turn so far. And he doesn't recognize it. So, okay, you got lovely dark eyes, she's offering herself to me. She's as degenerate as everything else around here. She's had enough of the court officials, which is understandable, I suppose. And so she approaches any stranger and makes compliments about his eyes. With that, Kay stood up in silence as if he had spoken his thoughts out loud and thus explained his act to the woman. I don't think you could be of any assistance to me, he said. To be of any real assistance, you would need to be in contact with higher officials, but I'm sure you only know the lower employees, and there are crowds of them milling about here. I'm sure you're very familiar with them and could achieve a great deal through them. I have no doubt about that. But the most that could be done through them would have no bearing at all on the final outcome of the trial. You, on the other hand, would lose some of your friends as a result, and I have no wish of that. Carry on with these people in the same way as you have been, as it does seem to be something you cannot do without. I have no regrets in saying this, as in return for your compliment to me, I also find you rather attractive, especially when you look at me as sadly as you are now, although you really have no reason to do so. You belong to the people I have to combat, and you're very comfortable among them. You're even in love with the student, or if you don't love him, you do at least prefer him to your husband. It's easy to see that from what you've been saying. No, she shouted, remaining sitting while she was in where she was, and grasped Kay's hands, which he failed to pull away fast enough. You can't go away now. You can't go away when you've misjudged me like that. Are you really capable of going away now? Am I really so worthless that you won't even do me the favor of staying a little bit longer? You misunderstand me, said Kay, sitting back down. If it's really important for me to stay here, then I'll be glad to do so. I have plenty of time. I came here thinking there would be a trial taking place. All I meant with what I said just now, was to ask you not to do anything on my behalf in the proceedings against me. But even that is nothing for you to worry about when you consider that there's nothing hanging on the outcome of this trial, and that whatever the verdict, I will just laugh at it. And that's even presupposing it ever even reaches any conclusion, which I very much doubt. I think it's much more likely that the court officials will be too lazy, too forgetful, or even too fearful ever to continue with these proceedings, and that they will soon be abandoned if they haven't been abandoned already. It's even possible that they will pretend to be carrying on with the trial in the hope of receiving a large bribe, although I can tell you now that will be quite in vain, as I pay bribes to no one. Perhaps one favor you could do me would be to tell the examining judge or anyone else who likes to spread important news that I will never be induced to pay any sort of bribe through any stratagem of theirs, and I'm sure they have many stratagems at their disposal. There is no prospect of that. You can tell them that quite openly, and what's more, I expect they have already noticed themselves, or even if they haven't, this affair is already not so important to me as they think. Those gentlemen would only save some work for themselves, or at least some unpleasantness for me, which, however, I am glad to endure if I know that each piece of unpleasantness for me is a blow against them, and I will make quite sure it is a blow against them. Do you actually know the judge? Of course I do, said the woman. He was the first one I thought of when I offered to help you. I didn't know he's only a minor official, but if you say it must be true. Mind you, I still think the report he gives to his superiors must have some influence, and he writes so many reports. You said these officials are lazy, but they're certainly not all lazy, especially this examining judge. He writes ever such a lot. Last Sunday, for instance, that session went on till the evening. Everyone had gone, but the examining judge, he stayed in the hall. I had to bring him a lamp in. All I had was a little kitchen lamp, but he was very satisfied with it and started to write straight away. Meantime, my husband arrived. He always has the day off on Sundays. We got the furniture back in and out and got out our room and got our room sorted out, and then a few of the neighbors came. We sat and talked for a little bit by candle. In short, we forgot all about the examining judge and went to bed. All of a sudden in the night, it must have been quite late in the night, I wake up. Next to the bed, there's the examining judge shading the lamp with his hand so that there's no light from it. So if there's no light from it that falls on my husband, he didn't need to be as careful as that. The way my husband sleeps, the light wouldn't have woken him up anyway. I was quite shocked and nearly screamed, but the judge was very friendly, warned me I should be careful. He whispered to me he's been writing all this time, and now he's brought me the lamp back, and he'll never forget how I looked when he found me there asleep. What I mean with all this, I just wanted to tell you how the examining judge really does write lots of reports, especially about you, as questioning you was definitely one of the main things on the agenda of that Sunday. If he writes reports as long as that, they must be of some importance. And besides all that, you can see from what happened that the examining judge is after me. And it's right now, when he's first begun to notice me, that I can have a lot of influence on him. And I've got other proof, I mean, a lot to him too. Yesterday he sent that student to me, the one he really trusts and who he works with. He sent him with a present for me, silk stockings. He said it was because I clear up the courtroom, but that's only a pretense. That job's no more than what I'm supposed to do. It's what my husband gets paid for. Nice stockings. They are. Nice stockings they are. Look. She stretched out her leg, drew her skirt up to her knee, and looked herself at the stockings. They are nice stockings, but they're too good for me, really. Very long passage. But
a lot of typographical errors.
Yeah, it's got, unfortunately. Kay makes assumptions on so many things. He makes assumptions about the court. He says they're all a bunch of lazy, blah, blah, blah. He assumes that when she looks at him sadly, that she's sad that, he's going to leave, or that she's sad that, he's not reciprocating her desire. He thinks that she's lusting after him. No, she's sad because she's like, wow, this poor sad fool. He doesn't get it. The same thing his landlady did. She looked sadly at him, and he's like, why are you looking sadly at me? And I was like, it's fine, I'm fine. It's the sadness of like, this poor sad fool, he doesn't get it. Next thing, the judge, anybody who interprets this as a bureaucracy that just gives people a runaround, that just is inane and crazy, clearly does not pay attention to these. I myself did not pay attention to these. Because what she described here can only be interpreted that way if you missed out all the prior stuff. One, they're paying extremely close attention to everything he says, everything he does. They're taking notes on everything. The judge is working way beyond overtime. The judge is willing to do his work and continue his work way beyond anybody else. He's working by a very difficult candlelight on a lamp. Two, he's very thoughtful of this woman. He asks her for that. He gets out of their way. They even forget that he's there. They keep going about their day. He comes in very late at night. He wakes her up. She's freaks out just because she's waked up, but he's like, okay, it's fine. Him shading the lamp is such a sign of how considerate he is. He didn't even have to, because the light wasn't going to hit her husband anyways. He still goes ahead and covers it just in case. The next thing, she is in on many things. She's not in on everything. And just like Kay, she assumes that the student and the judge are lusting after her. But we will see later on that actually there's no evidence for this whatsoever. That the judge probably did give her some very nice stockings because he actually appreciates her. Like he really appreciates her work. She's she's a good attendant insofar as she attends anything. She assumes it's out of lust. There's no evidence that that is the case. And there's no evidence that she really believes that either. Insofar as she has any control of the proceedings, it's because she's clearly a good person. And we do find out there is a sort of relationship. It's not clear what that it's not clear to me that the relationship has anything sexual to it between her, the student, and the magistrate. We will see very quickly in a bit that her husband is not a good person like she is. Nonetheless, they work for the court, and that once you get it into the court system, you only do so because to the extent that you are in the court, to that extent, you are an honorable person in that station, and that's all that is demanded of you. Which is weird. There's something that happens later which is initially seems very weird, but I will point this out right now. He mentions that under no circumstances will he ever bribe anybody, and that there's nothing that the court could ever set up so that he would bribe anybody. This will come back to bite him in the ass. All right. Where was I?
She suddenly.
Ah, yes. So nice stockings. She suddenly interrupted herself and laid her hand on Kay's as if she wanted to calm him down, and whispered, "Be quiet. Berthold is watching us." Kay slowly looked up. In the doorway to the courtroom stood a young man. He was short, his legs were not quite straight, and he continually moved his finger round in a short, thin, red beard with which he hoped to make himself look dignified. Kay looked at him with some curiosity. He was the first student he had ever met of the unfamiliar discipline of jurisprudence, face to face at least, a man who would even most likely attain high office one day. The student, in contrast, seemed to take no notice of Kay at all. He merely withdrew his finger from his beard long enough to beckon to the woman and went over to the window. The woman leant over to Kay and whispered, "Don't be cross with me, please don't, and please don't think ill of me either. I've got to go with him now, to this horrible man. Just look at his bent legs. But I'll come straight back, and then I'll go with you, if you'll take me. I'll go wherever you want. You can do whatever you like with me. I'll be happy if I can get away from here as long as possible. It'd be the best if I could get away from here for good." She stroked Kay's hand once more, jumped up and ran over the window. So now this is them playing along on the negative side of things. They've tried to help him. He doesn't want the help. So what else can they do? They're going to test him. This is all a test. You know, as I've already said, the whole world is in on this trial. Everybody who interacts with them is, whether they're even aware of it or not, they're testing him. They're trying him.
These are mini tests.
Yeah. So now she's playing along with his sexual desires. She's playing along with his ego. She's tempting him. You know, and the thing about tempting is that the whole point of tempting is to try somebody. Another thing, okay, I forgot to mention it. It's important enough. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but it's important enough to say it again. He judged her. He never told her about what. You know, it says here, with that, Case stood up in silence as if he had spoken his thoughts out loud and thus explained his actions to the woman. "I don't think you'd be of any assistance to me. You know, to be any real assistance, you would need to be in contact with high officials, blah, blah." Before that, he thinks, oh, she's a whore, she's a slut, you know, she's throwing herself on me, she throws herself on everybody. And now, you know, she's got tired of her husband and the officials of the court, and now she's coming for me. You know, like she's a lowly, she's a nobody. He judges her in silence, never tells her what she judges for, and says, "Oh, sorry, you know, you can't be of any use to me." She knows he has judged her, and you know, what is it? You can't go away now. You can't go away when you've misjudged me like that. Are you really capable of going away now? Am I really so worthless that you won't even do me the favor of staying a little bit longer? This is what he claims the court is doing to him.
Yeah, that's a rule.
This is what he does to people. He judges them. He doesn't ever tell them about what they are guilty, but he lets them know down low they are guilty of something, and that he's displeased with them, and that he doesn't care for them anymore.
It's everyone. Or every situation.
Yeah, every situation and everyone. So he's a hypocrite. Let's continue. Where was be quiet? Bertolt's watching. Okay, she says, "Don't be cross." Yeah, were you say something?
No.
Okay. So let me just reread what she said. Don't be cross with me, please don't, and please don't think ill of me either. I've got to go with him now to this horrible man. Just look at his bent legs. But I'll come straight back, and then I'll go with you if you'll take me. I'll go wherever you want. You can do whatever you like with me. I'll be happy if I can be away from here for as long as possible. It'd be best if I could get away from here for good. She stroked Kay's hand at once more, jumped up, and ran over to the window. Before he realized it, Kay grasped for her hand, but failed to catch it. He really was attracted to the woman, and even after thinking hard about it, could find no good reason why he should not give in to her allure. It briefly crossed his mind that the woman meant to entrap him on behalf of the court, but that was an objection he had no difficulty in fending off. Indeed, he got that right. This is a temptation. They're trying to see what he does, and if he does the right thing or not. So it is entrapment. It totally is.
And his reasoning is, well, they're trying to entrap me. I can just say, yeah, I knew you were trying to entrap me, so I went along with it. Aha.
Which in no court is that actual valid defense.
Not at all. But that's his reasoning. That's his faulty reasoning.
Just before I forget, because I just remembered, going back yet again, she offers him help. She's just a lowly whore, and says even if she could help me, ultimately whatever she does is going to do nothing for the ultimate judgment. So it doesn't matter.
Help me, she's not in a position to help me because she doesn't know the top. She doesn't know the truth.
He doesn't even know who the hell she is or who she knows.
Clothes when he saw her for the first time, and didn't even recognize her the second time he saw her, and then realized it was her, and the third time he sees her, he still doesn't know who she is.
Yeah, so he's just assuming things with no good reason. If I was in his situation, if anybody offers any kind of help, I mean, like, please do anything you can. I'd appreciate it, whether it ends up being a lot or a little, or nothing at all. It'd be another thing if you have some kind of suspicion of, like, they might hamper you, but he has no reason to think that anything she does is going to negatively affect him. So why wouldn't you accept the help?
Because you're a narcissist.
Yeah, like
you have a failure of being injured.
He's an elitist prick. Only people on his level are worthy of helping him. What is that one story? There's some story like we're taught here as a kid. I don't know. You've surely heard it. It's like about, like, what is it? I think it's like an African story, right? It's like one of the characters like an ant, and it's like it's trying to help. Yeah, and they're trying to offer the other one's like, oh, you can't help me, you're just a little ant, and in the end the ant's the one that saves him.
In some variations of the story.
Yeah, at least the one I remember.
You're right.
So, anyways, just assuming things. Now he's like, well, she's really hot. He really was attracted to the woman, and even after thinking hard about it, could find no good reason why he should not give in to her allure. He's like, well, he's a typical hedonist. He's like, I got no reason to follow my dick. Why not?
But the grasshopper and the ant, I think it's a different story. I was thinking of the mouse and the lion,
Oh, that might have been. There's variations of that story. There's various stories. So yeah, the grasshopper and the lion. The mouse and the lion is definitely one of them.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify because I was like, the grasshopper and the ant's about storing food for the winter or whatever. Not for seeing. It's about whatever.
I mean, it's been like.
Yeah, I know.
27 years or something.
Yeah, I was trying to remember.
Not like 20.
Ant sounded wrong. Sorry.
23 years or something, but
my memory is terrible.
Mine is worse. So, okay. So he tries to grab her by the hand, but failed to catch it. He really was attracted to the woman, blah, blah, blah. It briefly crossed his mind that the woman meant to entrap him on behalf of the court, but that was an objection he had no difficulty in fending off. In what way could she entrap him? Was he not still free? So free that he could crush the entire court whenever he wanted, at least where it concerned him? Could he not have that much confidence in himself? And her offer to help sounded sincere, and maybe it wasn't quite worthless. And maybe there was no better revenge against the examining judge and his cronies than to take this woman away from him and have her for himself. Maybe then, after much hard work, writing dishonest reports about Kay, the judge would go to the woman's bed late one night and find it empty. And it would be empty because she belonged to Kay, because this woman at the window, this lush, supple, warm body in somber clothes of rough, heavy material belonged to him. Totally to him and to him alone.
This guy I just met, I hate him so much.
This guy doing a trial that I don't even give a fuck about, because it doesn't matter, it's not going to affect me anyways, but I want to ruin his life. You know, he's into this woman, I know it now.
Life, not even his whole life. If I could only ruin one moment of his...
Yeah, just take this woman from him, like that's victory. Completely the wrong priorities. You know, she's like, she could help me. He doesn't even care that she could help him in his trial ultimately. He's like, how could I use this woman to humiliate these people who he thinks have humiliated him? Who haven't actually humiliated him, but you know, he perceives that they have. I mean, he just wants tit for tat, and he wants to get back at them for a perceived wrong, which hasn't happened. So once he had settled his thoughts towards the woman in this way, he began to find the quiet conversation at the window was taking too long. He rapped on the podium with his knuckles and then even with his fist. The student briefly looked away from the woman to glance at Kay over his shoulder, but did allow himself to be disturbed. In fact, he even pressed himself close to the woman and put his arms around her. She dropped her head down low as if listening to him carefully. As she did so, he kissed her right on the neck, hardly even interrupting what he was saying. Kay saw this as a confirmation of the tyranny the student held over the woman, and which she had already complained about. He stood up and walked up and down the room. Glancing sideways at the student, he wondered what would be the quickest possible way to get rid of him. And so it was not unwelcome to him when the student, clearly disturbed by Kay's toing and froing, which Kay had now developed into a stamping up and down, said to him, "You don't have to stay here, you know, if you're getting impatient. You could have gone earlier. No one would have missed you. In fact, you should have gone. You should have left as quickly as possible as soon as I got here." This comment could have caused all possible rage to break out between them, but Kay also bore in mind that this was a prospective court official speaking to a disfavored defendant, and he might well have been taking pride in speaking this way. Kay remained standing quite close to him and said with a smile, "You're quite right. I am impatient. But the easiest way to settle this impatience would be if you left us. On the other hand, if you come here to study, you are a student, I hear. I'll be quite happy to leave the room to you and go away with the woman. Yeah, and go away with the woman. I'm sure you still have a lot of study to do before before you're made into a judge. It's true that I'm still not at all that familiar with your branch of jurisprudence, but I take it involves a lot more than speaking roughly. And I see you have no shame in doing that extremely well." "He shouldn't have been allowed to move about so freely," said the student, as if he wanted to give the woman an explanation for Kay's insult. "That was a mistake. I've told the examining judge so. He should at least have been detained in his room between hearings. Sometimes it's impossible to understand what the judge thinks he's doing." So again, the court official's being quite nice to him, you know, a bit straightforward and, you know, to the point. But he's not being mean, and Kay is.
He's giving him another out.
yeah, basically he's like, don't make things worse for yourself. You can just go, it's better.
I got here.
Yeah, another thing, just to call back to like the prior two paragraphs, we haven't read that far. Kay has a completely unbelievable belief. You know, he says he could crush the court at any time he wishes in anything that he directs himself to. He has no reason to think this. He hasn't done anything to the court yet. Nor does he even know what the hell doing anything to the court would mean, because he doesn't even know what the court is.
No, he's being railroaded by this unfair bureaucracy. You see?
Basically. And I mean, like, in this case, one, he shouldn't be there in the first place. The woman broke a rule by letting him in to see at all. So he's already broken, like, the guy has been watching them, the student. Actually, he has a name. What was his name? Bertolt. So Bertolt has been watching them. He knows they've already broken the rules. It's bad enough. And Kay's making it worse by remaining there. And he's making it even worse by posing as if he's the one in charge of the place. As if it's his home, his court. And he's like, you should leave us. Like, what? So yet again, so the students, like, you know, they shouldn't have let him free. Here's another thing. He asks, like, he's like, how could she entrap him anyways? You know, he's a free man. You know, he gets to walk around freely. Last time I already mentioned the thing about the arrest, about how he's arrested in multiple ways. And all these things are just further tightening the arrest. Not because the court is itself tightening, but because Kay is tightening the court around himself.
He's not free. He never was.
Yeah, this is something I actually should be pointed out. The trial didn't start when he was 30. He became conscious of the trial when he was 30. You know, at the point of 30, it's even told to him, by the way, already in chapter 1 by the guards. They had already been watching him because they're the ones sent out to watch people who might be indicted. So by the time they come to arrest him, he has already been indicted. But he's been watched by these guards for God knows how long before.
So,
yeah, so, you know, like
at 30, he had enough time to correct himself, you know, to do it without their intervention. And then it's like, okay, well, it didn't happen, therefore, here we are. That's how I...
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what I think the actual meaning of the text has to go with. Like, the trial is the entirety of life. When you become conscious of the trial, you're in bad. Like, yeah. if you ever become conscious that you are on trial, it's because you've really fucked up. And the trial is not there to condemn you. The trial is there to save you. Everything the court is doing is trying to save him at every step, and he just keeps digging himself deeper. Every temptation is a chance for him to redeem himself.
I didn't know we were going to give that away so soon. But yeah. There's more, don't worry. There's more.
Oh no, even then, I mean, like...
That's our huge revelation.
Yeah. I think, you know, like, just saying at the offset when I said, like, he's guilty, it is a catch, it's to catch people's attention. But if you start, even if you start thinking about that, and don't even believe it, even if you don't believe it, just take it as given. You don't have to believe, but just go and say, like, what if this is true? And if you read the text according to that, you can't get away from these conclusions. They're not hard. Well, I don't know. I can't say this because I'm not. I only have the experience in my own mind. But for me, these things came up really quickly once I gave this a significant a bit of thinking while I'm reading and commenting on it. A lot of this, by the way, I have not thought about before. I am thinking. What is it called? Extemporaneous? I'm thinking on the spot. I don't think extemporaneously is the proper word.
You're thinking spontaneous.
Yeah, spontaneously. I'm thinking on the spot.
Yeah.
So there's many things which I'm not.
I've read this book.
It's a great book. I mean, it's not every day that you read a book and that you can comment on it. This is a great book. I gotta say it. Like I said it the first time. Like the more we engage this, the more convinced I am that this is perhaps the greatest story ever written. It is so deep.
I agree intent.
It is so deep and it's so perfect. Like the metaphors are perfect, the symbolism is perfect. The way in which no story I have ever read or heard of has had this effect, in which I have realized that this is a perfect mirror of you. If you are not at a certain level of development on various levels, you will see only what you are capable of seeing and nothing more. And the book honestly looks that way, despite the fact that in the text there are clear things being stated against any single interpretation of that kind. But the story is narrated in such a way that you get lost in your own tunnel vision. So you end up seeing exactly what you want to see, which is what Kay does. Kay sees only what he wants to see.
And we're at such a level of development that I, for one, can't understand how anyone could read what Kay says, not even necessarily paying attention to what he does, but just what he says, and think, wow, this poor guy's being exploited.
It's amazing, but it happens all the time.
And what happens with, I study literature, and I'm like, did we read the same book? When people were having discussions in class, but this especially.
But this book is great. This is a book that I think you could teach this as a philosophy course itself. You can actually talk about the philosophy of the trial, because there is a very strongly, logically coherent and unified true concept weaving itself, manifested in everything that's going on in this book. You'd be surprised that that's not as rare as you might think. And the reason it's not rare is because, at least it's not rare for a certain kind of art, which would be like real art. And that's, we haven't mentioned it in our reading of this so far. Art is not a very high standard, people. It's not very difficult to make something that's actually artistic, like in a true sense. It's actually, when you actually realize what it is, it's amazing how mundane it is. So it's not surprising once you understand that, how it is that people who have genuine inspiration so easily make things that are bafflingly very well put together and meaningful. What it is rare, however, is to have a significant depth of meaning to the work on this level. Because a lot of things don't go this hard on these issues.
Oh, okay. I thought you were... Yeah, sorry. I just never heard you use that parlance before. And I thought it was the other way. This goes hard. No, it goes this deeply into these subjects is what I mean. It goes this hard into.
Yeah, that's
just threw me off. Yeah, bad.
slang. Slang from the old days.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's just going on tangents. Let's keep going.
Yeah, we're not even done.
So again, yet again, the last thing, the student says, that was a mistake. They shouldn't have let him go free. I told the examining judge so. He should at least have detained him in his room between hearings. Sometimes it's impossible to understand what the judge thinks he's doing. So they're all trying to help him. And the higher-ups are the ones who are saying, just let him keep doing his own thing. We're not going to do anything, or at least anything that he notices that we're doing, despite the fact he notices and decides to ignore that is the case. He notices that they're trapping him with his woman, and he says, well, even if it's so, I could probably get away with it. I could probably cook up some excuse that, it's not to get away with, like, this thing that I know I'm not supposed to be doing, but I'm going to do it anyways, because I think I can get away with it. It takes a supreme amount of idiocy. So, the student judge obviously disagrees about how best to help Kay, how best to deal with his trial. He thinks that they should have literally just locked him up. It's like, this guy is like so bad. We should take away his like actual control of moving about, so that he doesn't fuck himself up any further. That kind of goes to the political things, right? Where we
this
have
guy's
plenty
so bad, we should keep him in solitary confinement. But, he's only harming himself more by being so, quote unquote, free.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's read the opposite way. We should lock this guy up. But
Yep. But we're giving you the keys to the kingdom here, people. Some would say that we shouldn't have revealed this, because knowledge is dangerous. But I'm genuinely surprised, astonished, and disgusted by the fact that there is nothing of this kind of explanation out there. Somebody had to do it, and though I'm doing it on a very low effort budget, I apologize for the noise and the low quality of my mic, because I had the fan blowing last time in my direction. It's hot where I'm at. I don't have AC, so I just have a room swamp cooler. And that doesn't cool off very much if it's not directly pointed at you, but I decided to spare the listeners this time from the occasional gust of wind hitting the mic. So for those of you who might have complained, luckily you haven't complained so far, but if you're thinking of complaining, just know that on the third time, I did this for you. I'm here sweating so that you don't have to hear horrible, horrible gales through my microphone.
So then you have to sweat, not understanding the trial, so that you can impress your friends.
I am like the magistrate judge. I'm going out of my way to make this easier for you. So, okay. Continuing. You're wasting your breath, said Kay. Then he reached his hand out towards the woman and said, come with me. So that's it, said the student. Oh no, you're not going to get her. And with a strength you would not have expected from him, he glanced tenderly at her, lifted her up in one arm, and his back bent under the weight, ran with her to the door. In this way he showed unmistakably that he was to some extent afraid of Kay, but he nonetheless dared to provoke him still further by stroking and squeezing the woman's arm with his free hand. Kay ran the few steps up to him, but when he had reached him and was about to take hold of him and if necessary throttle him, just gonna assault an officer of the court because he's horny for a woman. The woman said, it's no good, it's the examining judge who sent for me. I daren't go with you, this little bastard. And here she ran her hand over his student's face. So she's like, this little bastard, and just stroking his face all kind and gently. This little bastard won't let me be. Won't let me. And you don't want to be set free, shouted Kay, laying his hand on the student's shoulder, who then snapped at it with his teeth. No, shouted the woman, pushing Kay away with both hands. No, don't do that. No, don't do that. What do you think you're doing? That'd be the end of me. Let go of him, please. Just let go of him. He's only carrying out the judge's orders. He's carrying me to him.
This is an episode of Popeye the Sailor Man at this point.
Let him take you then, and I want to see nothing more of you, said Kay, enraged by his disappointment and giving the student a thump in the back so that he briefly stumbled, and then, glad that he had not fallen, immediately jumped up all the higher with his burden. Kay followed them slowly. He realized that this was the first unambiguous setback he had suffered from his people. It was, of course, nothing to worry about. He accepted this setback only because he was looking for a fight. If he stayed at home and carried on with his normal life, he would be 1,000 times superior to these people and could get any of them out of his way with just for the kick. And he imagined the most laughable scene possible as an example of this, if this contemptible student, this inflated child, this knock-kneed Redbeard, if he were kneeling at Elsa's bed, wringing his hands and begging for forgiveness. Kay so enjoyed imagining this scene that he decided to take the student along to Elsa with him if he ever should get the opportunity. Remember that Elsa is this barmaid that he fancies, but which he just toys with. I suppose the insult here is that he's like, oh well, you know, if he ever fancied Elsa, I bet I could cook him with Elsa. Okay. And yeah, this is like the Popeye, very surrealist and like unreal scenario here. Like the guy the student looks strange and weird and unreal, but like I mean, all the court officials have been described as just being kind of these abnormal, like weird, either off-putting, ugly, or just like in this case a bit cartoonish looking people. But you know, like it just goes with the theme that they're not like you and I. They're not part of this world in the same way. I mean, the student has like superhuman strength. He jumps really high, jumps to this next fucking floor.
He drinks spinach or eats spinach. Inhales spinach and
got a red beard, some kind of Irish man, some kind of Aryan.
Some sort of Tuatadana.
So there's that. So the woman's not in danger. She's in on it. She wants to go with him. She likes him. It's kind of played off that it's romantic. It's not clear to me that it is. It's kind of just seems to me like they're toying with him, like they're testing him. You know, they did this on purpose.
It's a farce.
What's clear though is this woman particularly, and it's well, now that I'm thinking about it, it's not clear.
Wait, what?
Let me just think for a second. Okay, so going to refer here to Giorgiani's thing. Giorgiani says that he reads this as this woman, and there's the two others, one other and then like a set of girls who are representations of the divine feminine that he thinks, and that they're the ones behind the court. I don't see a reason to think that. I also don't buy, it's not clear that there is a supernatural explanation that these women have a power to entice him. Because the first woman that he tried to rape, he kind of was that way with her too. Like, he's just a very horny, impulsive guy with no respect for anyone else. Like, he really is this much of a man-child. Like, he is literally this superficial. Like, any woman like that is like semi-attractive, like he wants to go after. He earlier he says that, or is it later? It might be later. It's not a big thing, so I'm going to say it anyways. He blames or he accuses the court of being full of skirt chasers. But he's a skirt chaser.
He's the type of person who sees an attractive woman and says, would.
Would, could.
Or would not.
And then he tries to.
But I don't think he... I mean, yes, there's evidence to the contrary, but I don't think he's particularly horny. I don't think it's about him being particularly horny. It's just like, I could do that. I could get her if I really wanted.
Yeah, it's not exactly, it's probably not,
goes on dates, but he doesn't want to actually go on the date. He just wants to know he can get a girlfriend or something. That's what I read this.
No, I agree with that completely. Because when he thinks about it at first, the kick he gets out of it, like that makes him really want her, is that he wants to get back at the judge for, like, you know, humiliating him as he perceives it, and he wants to humiliate them back. Only afterwards he's like, oh well, you know, she is pretty hot. But the primary motivation is at first not a sexual one. I think that even then, there is a metaphysical explanation here, which is this is not what I'm going to say is not sexist. I can tell you that it is something that it can be interpreted that way, but it's not, because it's just the way things play out. The fact that women are associated strongly, not merely by social standards, but there is an ontological relationship here with beauty, and that beauty since the days of Plato and especially in Gnosticism, beauty being a sensuous thing is bad. Women are the personified representation of beauty. So the fact that Kay is so strongly attracted to women, that he's so strongly swayed by beauty, and beauty is just a surface show, is part of the meaning of this, why this scenario is playing out this way. Why it is specifically women that have this effect on him. We have already established that he is indeed a superficial person. What is then the, like, sensuous, desiring, like, a presentation of this? It's a woman. It's a beautiful woman.
It's a literary device. It's not a...
Yeah, and so, you know, the way this logically plays out is exactly in this. You know, he's presented with beauty. He's a superficial person. That's why he's attracted to it so strongly. That's why his desire, you know, because what one is attracted to in so many ways, by and far, isn't to do with what one is and who one is. He is a superficial person, so therefore, like, beauty has an extreme pull on him. And beauty is deceptive precisely because it is a surface show.
Yeah, the critiques I've read of the women lacking agency in this work is missing the point, in my opinion.
They're the story's about him.
It's like, about Kate, not even anyone else, really.
Yeah, like the court. All of these are external manifestations of the court of his own soul. It's his higher self judging, you know, the empirical lower self. You know, the court. Why is it the court calls upon, you know, the guilty calls the court upon themselves? Why? Because they are their own judge, jury, and executioner. Why is it that Kay has these moments in which, like, he's aware that he is a central cause of why all of this is happening, and yet he becomes aware of it and immediately forgets it? Because he is. All of this trial is a trial he has put upon himself. All these people are putting temptations before him because they are the temptations which he puts upon himself. You know, and this is a very old theological trope. You know, people say this in church all the time. You know, oh, Satan tempted me. No, motherfucker, Satan didn't tempt you. The temptation comes from you. It's not Satan's fault that, you know, you are into some weird stuff or whatever. You know, like suppose you're a straight person in a southern church, but secretly you're gay, and you're like, oh, but Satan tempted me because he put a hot young boy, whatever. No, Satan didn't do anything. It's you. You're the one with the desires. You're the one who posits your own temptations.
Perhaps. That's a
that's a bad one because it's not because I don't agree that being gay is a sin or necessarily bad.
Well, yeah, I wasn't going to say that even, but yeah, we don't know what that is on the metaphysical level. Why one is born attracted to men instead of women. Because I know that they're generally attracted to men. It's not a moral failing or something.
Yeah, it's not a moral failure or whatever. But on a metaphysical level, like this has to be the case. That insofar, whether you take it like that you are a free soul in Christianity, or even before where you aren't a free soul, where God posits everything. Even if you shift this to the perspective of God, well, God posits everything. God is the one that exists in the world. You are just a God seeing the world through you. You're God playing that He's not God. In this trial is nothing but God putting Himself on trial. Same thing. So the ultimate metaphysical blame, the theological blame for temptation, is not on anyone else except by the person who was tempted themselves.
By playing the game.
Yeah, by playing the game. Like you chose to play the game, then you can't complain that the game went exactly as the rules you set up.
Even if you don't remember that you set it up.
It too.
In the world as we understand.
Which is part of the game. If you remembered, it wouldn't be the game. Wouldn't be the play. And this is. Well, I'll keep it. It's literally at the end, so
Yeah.
I'll keep it to myself. We already spoiled so much, but believe me, we have not spoiled enough.
Not yet.
So let's continue. So he gives up. He sees her taken away. He tries to run after them, and he's like, "Oh well, it doesn't really matter." What is it? He's like, "It's only a setback."
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. He's trying to. He's explaining himself to his way that it's like it doesn't really matter. He said he realized that this was the first unambiguous setback he had suffered from these people. It was, of course, nothing to worry about. He accepted the setback only because he was looking for a fight. So here he recognizes, it's only a problem because he wants to make it a problem. If he stayed at home and carried on with his normal life, he would be 1,000 times superior to these people and could get any of them out of his way just with a kick. It's unwarranted. Imaginations, assuming things again. The whole thing about, cucking the student. So Kay was curious to see where the woman would be taken, and he hurried over to the door, and the student was not likely to carry her through the streets on his arm. It turned out that the journey was far shorter. Directly opposite the flat there was a narrow flight of wooden steps, which probably led up to the attic. They turned as they went up so that it was not possible to see where they ended. The student carried the woman up these steps, and after the exertions of running with her, he was soon running and moving very slowly. The woman waved down at Kay, and by raising a little bit her shoulders, she tried to show that she was an innocent party in this abduction, although the gesture did not show a lot of regret. Kay watched her without expression like a stranger. He wanted to show neither that he was disappointed, nor that he would easily get over his disappointment. Completely contradictory. He's like, I don't want her to see that I care. So I don't want him to see disappointed, but I also don't want her to think that I'm going to get over this easily, that I'm going to forgive her for this. again, piling judgment on somebody for something completely inane that has nothing of importance ultimately, but he's assigned to hold a grudge over this. The man literally knows a woman for like 20 minutes, and then it's now like, I have a personal grudge against the court because of her, and against her because she went off with the guy.
And this absurd scene that he didn't even really appropriately react to. As far as I'm concerned.
The two of them had disappeared, but Kay remained standing in the doorway. He had to accept that the woman had not only cheated him, but that she had also lied to him when she said she was being taken to the examining judge. The examining judge certainly wouldn't be sitting and waiting in the attic. The wooden stairs would explain nothing to him, however long he stared at them. Then Kay noticed a small piece of paper next to him, went across to it and read in a childish and unpracticed hand, "Entrance to the court offices." Were the court offices here in the attic of this tenement then? If that was how they were accommodated, it did not attract much respect, and it was some comfort for the accused to realize how little money this court had at its disposal if it had to locate its offices in a place where the tenants of the building, who were themselves among the poorest of people, would throw their unneeded junk. On the other hand, it was possible that the officials had enough money, but that they squandered it on themselves rather than use it for the court's purposes. Going by Kay's experience of them so far, that even seemed probable, except that if the court were allowed to decay in that way, it would not just humiliate the accused, but also give him more encouragement than if the court were simply in a state of poverty. Kay also now understood that the court was ashamed to summon those it accused to the attic of this building for the initial hearing, and why it preferred to impose upon them in their own homes. What a position it was that Kay found himself in compared with the judge sitting up in the attic. Kay at the bank had a big office with an anteroom and had an enormous window through which he could look down at the activity in the square. It was true, though, that he had no secondary income from bribes and fraud, and he couldn't tell a servant to bring him a woman up to the office on his arms. Kay, however, was quite willing to do without such things, in his life at least. Kay was still looking at the notice when a man came up the stairs, looked through the open door into the living room, where it was also possible to see the courtroom, and finally asked Kay whether he had just seen a woman there. "You're the court usher, aren't you?" asked Kay. "That's right," said the man. "Oh, yes, you're the defendant, Kay. I recognize you as well. Nice to see you here." And he offered Kay his hand, which was far from what Kay had expected. And when Kay said nothing, he added, "There's no courtroom in session planned for today, though." "I know that," said Kay, as he looked at the usher's civilian coat, which, besides its ordinary buttons, displayed two gilded ones on the as the only sign of his office, and seemed to have been taken from an old army officer's coat. "I was speaking with your wife a little while ago. She is no longer here. The student has carried her off to the examining judge." "Listen to this," said the usher. "They're always carrying her away from me. It's Sunday today, and it's not part of my job to do any work today, but they send me off with some message which isn't even necessary just to get me away from here. What they do is they send me off not too far away so that I can still hope to get back in time if I really hurry. So off I go running as fast as I can and shout the message to the crack in the door and of the office I've been sent to, so out of breath they'll hardly be able to understand it, run back here again, but the student's been even faster than I am. Well, he's got less far to go. He's only got to run down the steps. If I wasn't so dependent on him, I'd have squashed the student against the wall here a long time ago. Right here, next to the sign. I'm always dreaming of doing that. Just here, just above the floor, that's where he's crushed onto the wall, his arms stretched out, his fingers spread apart, his crooked legs twisted around into a circle, and blood squirted out all around him. It's only ever a dream so far, though." "Is there nothing else you do?" asked Kay with a smile. "Nothing that I know of," said the usher. "And it's going to get even worse now. Up till now, he's only been carrying her off for himself. Now he started carrying her off for the judge and all, just like I'd always said he would." "Does your wife, then, not share some of the responsibility?" asked Kay. He had to force himself as he asked this question, as he too felt so jealous now. "Of course she does," said the usher. "It's more her fault than theirs. It was her who attached herself to him. All he did, he just chases after any woman." There's 5 flats in this block alone where he's being thrown out after working his way in there. And my wife is the best looking woman in the whole building. But it's me who's not even allowed to defend himself. If that's how things are, then there's nothing that can be done, said Kay. Well, why not? Asked the usher. He's a coward, that student. If he wants to lay a finger on my wife, all you have to do is give him such a good hiding he'd never dare do it again. But I'm not allowed to do that, and nobody else is going to do me the favor, as they're all afraid of his power. The only one who could do it is a man like you. What? How could I do it? Asked Kay in astonishment. Well, you're facing a charge, aren't you? Said the usher. Yes, but that's all the more reason for me to be afraid. Even if he has no influence on the outcome of the trial, he probably has some of the initial examination. Yes, exactly, said the usher, as if Kay's view had been just as correct as his own. Only we don't usually get any trials heard here with no hope at all. I'm not of the same opinion, said Kay, although that ought not to prevent me from dealing with the student if the opportunity arises. I would be very grateful to you, said the usher of the court, somewhat formally, not really seeming to believe that his highest wish could be fulfilled. Perhaps, continued Kay, perhaps there are some other officials of yours here, perhaps all of them, who would deserve the same. Oh, yes, said the usher, as if this was a matter of course. Then he looked at Kay, trustingly, which, despite all his friendliness, he had not done until then, and added, They're always rebelling. But the conversation seemed to have become a little uncomfortable for him as he broke it off by saying, Now I have to report to the office. Would you like to come with me? There's nothing for me to do here, said Kay. You'd be able to have a look at it. No one will take any notice of you. Is it worth seeing then? Asked Kay hesitatingly, although he felt very keen to go with him. Well, said the usher, I thought you'd be interested in it. All right then, said Kay finally. I'll come with you. And quicker than the usher himself, he ran up the steps. Yet again, the trial continues. Some things to say. So, just looking this over. He looks at the court offices. He notices that they're in the attics, and the attics are extremely uncomfortable, very small. And he's like, well, wow, like, either the court is really poor and powerless and shameful, or the court is really corrupt. Yeah, with the higher officials taking up all the money. Either way, he's like, oh, this is shameful, disrespectful, haha.
It's only 12,000 furlong. Sorry.
See, this says, going by Kate's experience of them so far, it's talking about them being corrupt. That even seemed probable, except that if the court were allowed to decay in that way, it would not just humiliate the accused, but also give him more encouragement than if the court were simply in a state of poverty. That is an interesting contradiction, because it seems to me that it's true. Just as, the court doesn't care about how they appear. The people who come before the court are probably people who are in some ways superficial, precisely because they haven't thought very well or deeply about anything in the world and about themselves. So going to such a court that's disheveled and awful, uncomfortable, is humiliating to those people. It's not designed to be humiliating in itself.
Yeah.
But the relationship is going to create humiliation. But it's a merely perceived humiliation. It's not an actual humiliation. It's only humiliation perceived on the part of the defendant who assumes things. The thing about the encouragement is also true. Except it's a false encouragement. It's also a test. That if somebody goes and says, oh, wow, look, it's a shabby courts, terrible placement, everyone looks poor, haha, I can deal with this court myself. If you've done that, if you think that, you failed a few of the tests tied with that.
It's like the movie trope where the big city guy goes to a small town and thinks he's better than everyone.
Yep.
What? You're detaining me? You know who I am? You're just a small-time cop or what?
Let's see. So he says. Then he says he thinks he's Kay also now understood. Again, he has assumed things. He assumed there's only one interpretation of his own. That the court was ashamed to summon those that accused for the act of this building for the initial hearing, and why it preferred to impose upon them in their own homes. We'll find out once he gets in why the hearings are not held there, and it's not because the court is ashamed. It's to do with the fact that it's higher. It's on a higher floor, which metaphorically it means that's also part of it's higher to heaven, it's higher, closer to God. It's closer to the law. And if you are ever look into mystical experiences, something constantly talked about in the far more detailed experiences is that people who go into those domains are keenly aware that there is a point at which they can go no further because divinity itself is unbearable to them. The light of God is too much. The purity of God is too much. We are too impure. We literally cannot exist as the immediate beings that we are. As flesh beings, you cannot go into the divine realms. Why? You will literally be destroyed. Your body cannot handle it. So this is yeah. So it'll come up later that there is a deep affinity with this.
So they're always rebelling. His co-workers, his fellow Archons.
Yeah, they're always helping people when they technically shouldn't.
Yeah. But they also perform their functions and can't do anything else. Like a program.
Yes, yeah. Somebody pointed out in something else.
I can destroy this guy, but I can't because it's not my program.
Yeah, and they don't want to. They're not.
He said he was.
But does he? Like these are like the lowest of the court officials.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're part of the court.
He's just the usher.
Yeah, so he's just the usher. Now he can say, insofar as he does his duty as the usher, that's all that is demanded of him. This is why people can quote unquote break the law. Everybody's aware that they're doing it, and nobody ever is punished for it because it's not really breaking the law. Because they are only bound to do exactly what their role is. They can go above and beyond that, but they don't have to. And all of them only go above and beyond that, never to hurt the defendants, but to help them.
This reminds me of something that not what you just said, but rereading this, reminds me of something that you said when we first met about if only people could realize just how free they are. Kay is unfree here. We know that. We've established that. But also, he's freer than they are. They perform their roles, right? Kay, he says, I can't do anything, that I'm not allowed to do. But you could.
Yeah, oh my god, that's true. I had a different interpretation of that for a moment.
Oh, what were you thinking?
I was thinking something more superficial. I'm like, well, you're already in trouble. Getting into more trouble is not going to
That's great too. That doesn't contradict. That's it.
But what you said is totally true. I buy it 100%.
But it goes into the shit. Sorry. It goes into the things where we talk about, religious texts talk about how, we are higher than the angels. I mean, I don't want to say all of these people are just angels or whatever, but that's the analog. That's the literary reference. But these are like what we interpret to be angels, but they're like lower than us, but appear higher,
Yes, re-listened to this whole book yesterday. There's a thing later which goes into a misdirection. Like again, I think I mentioned earlier that just because they're part of the courts, they know what's going on, but they're not all in entirely on what's going on. So long as they perform their roles, they don't know exactly what everyone else is doing. They only know what they're doing ultimately, and the people at their own level. So the people in the court also assume things about the court themselves. The thing is, they don't necessarily act upon those beliefs unwittingly and fuck things up. They stick to their role. They stick to the job that they're supposed to do, and they comment. They will comment freely because all these people, none of them hide anything from him. They tell him exactly what they think the court's about, and it's up to Kay to decide whether he takes, how he interprets that, what he takes, and whether he takes it at all.
I just wanted to say I'm sorry for my rudimentary brain fart on the fly commentary because I haven't slept well.
It's been good so far.
My mind is but I keep trying to articulate, and I feel like it's going nowhere for the most part. So I apologize for these diversions.
I have not noticed that, so you're doing it pretty good.
Audience. I mean, it feels that way to me. Maybe I'm just being self-conscious. I don't know. I hope it's helpful.
You're helping me. You're bringing up points I hadn't thought about. Very good. So, okay, the court usher, he meets them. Again, this court usher didn't have to help him. He's like, hey, you want to go through the offices? Why? No reason. He's just the court usher. He doesn't have to help him. He doesn't have to guide him or show him anything. He still does it. Why? Just because he wants to. The implication is he just wants to help him. He's just being a nice person. Now, he seems a bit less nice and understanding than his wife, which is probably why he's just the court usher, whereas the wife gets to get the ear of the judges.
Remember, so she's the triple goddess,
yeah.
I don't agree. I mean, I agree with you that I don't like that. I don't think that interpretation.
Yeah, I don't see it so far. Maybe as we read this further, I think about it more.
I'm trying to keep it in mind as we go.
But anyway, so he's more base than her, but he's still part of the court. He's still doing exactly what all the court officials so far have done. They're helping Kay, despite the fact that, they tell him things to help him. He doesn't know how to help himself. He doesn't even know how to game the system because he's so self-centered and he's so egotistical. He does not want to ask for help. So these beings are going out of their way to nudge him along and say, hey, you think you want to go check this out? You think you want to go look at these things? And he's like, well, what good would that be? I don't know. It's the court. You kind of be interested, I suppose. And he's like, oh yeah, true. The thing is about him being powerless in his position is very true. I think, especially because these people aren't guilty. They're not on trial, and they don't like their jobs. At least that's what they pretend. Just like how the woman was pretending that she didn't want to go with the student, but at the same time she's stroking him and kissing him, and then shrugging her hands, shoulders smiling.
It's a mummer's first.
So the same thing, the husband here, he's like, oh, I hate that student or whatever. He might just be one of those people where, there's plenty of people like this, you meet in your life, where they just like talking shit and complaining just for the sake of complaining. They they're not actually angry about anything. They don't actually want to do anything about anything because like they're fine with how things are. It's just something to do, something to say. It's just shit to talk with people. Let's see. He perceives the student as a womanizer. Again, that's probably not the case, but misperceptions happen even within the court as already established. Here, what could have Kay done in this case? Like, really, when you actually think about it, this is a temptation yet again. He's like, hey, can you kick this judge's ass for me? Despite the fact that Kay already knows that the husband knows that she wants it. Kay knows that she wants it. She is not pretending that she doesn't want it. I mean, she's verbally said no, but everything else, obviously. She's not being hurt by anything, and the husband seems to be pretty fine with it, despite the fact that he's like, oh, well, he's not, particularly pissed off at it anyway. He's kind of, you could say he's resigned to it, but I don't even read it that way. He's in on it, too. This whole thing is they already know, they've already seen that Kay has decided, because he has decided, he didn't have to, but he's like, I don't want to forgive them for this, so he's decided not to forgive them for this. So they're like, okay, now what will he do with that grudge? Could he just he could probably just reflect on it for a second and say wow, I have nothing to do with this, I have nothing to do with that woman, and whatever she's in, what she's in, that's her business. It's not hurting anybody, it's not hurting me ultimately, so I'll just forget it and actually move on, which would be the right thing to do. Instead, the usher spins him this whole story, and Kay's like, yeah, not only will I try to kick his ass, but maybe these other judges, higher judges, maybe I can kick their asses too while I'm at it. Digging himself further. I would, like the usher says, I would be very grateful to you, said the usher of the court, somewhat formally, not really seeming to believe that his highest wish could be fulfilled. The usher knows this isn't going to happen. But the intent is there.
Yeah, he doesn't know anything for a fact. He figures it out.
Yeah, true. So perhaps there are some higher officials, some of the officials of yours, perhaps all of them who would deserve the same. Oh yes, matter of course. Selected Cade. Trustingly, which despite all his friendliness, he had not done until then, and added, they're always rebelling. And you clarified that, which I had not even thought about. What he's talking about is the officials are always rebelling, against what he perceives as the law. They're always breaking the rules, but there's ways we can see that the breaking of the rule is not breaking the rules at all. But the conversation seemed to have become a little uncomfortable for him, and he broke off by saying, now I have to report to the office. Would you like to come with me? There's nothing for me to do here. We already read that. So Kay decides to go in. Let me just see how much longer this is. 34. 5 more pages. Which, at our pace, this has just been a good chapter. There's a lot to say about it. Actually, we're almost at an hour, almost at 2 hours. Wow. Let's leave this halfway here, because, if we go much longer, and this is a good place because this is a natural break in the story. Something else is going to happen afterwards. So, for those of you listening, Chapter 3.5. We'll finish it next time.
Bye.
All right. See you around.